What's going on, guys? Today we got a little bit different of a video. We're going to be putting together a compilation of our Toyota versus Lexus reviews that we have done. If you guys do like this video, please do not forget to hit like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future Toyota related content, and I'll check you guys out in the next video. On the left hand side of me, I've got a 2024 Lexus IS 300 luxury package versus a 2025 Toyota Camry XSE hybrid. Let's take a peek, see which one works better for you and your family. Let's talk about front ends for both the IS and the new Camry. So I'm gonna start with the IS first. I'm going to say that the front end of this vehicle, after doing a little deep dive online, I have known that basically when it comes to the luxury model of the IS, it's not as common as the F Sports, and the front grille is actually a little bit different on the luxury package than the regular F Sport or just the base IS 300. Everything that I've seen online, people have talked about this chrome piece going all the way down to the bottom, matching in with this kind of dark gray front grille. I'm actually gonna be a huge fan of this, especially paired up with this really cool reverse checkmark headlight. One thing to note is whenever you see a new IS on the road, which I think it's gonna be the 23 and above, is gonna have this new front end design with this headlight. I think the DRLs look insanely great on a new IS 300. Now, this with the front end, it is a very, very large front grille. When I originally saw this vehicle, I wasn't necessarily hugely attracted to the front grille, but now actually seeing it in person, seeing the body lines with the hood of this vehicle to the front end, I actually think Lexus has done a very, very great job. And it's actually one thing I will be taking over the Camry is going to be the front end and the headlights on the Lexus versus the new 2025 Camry. Now, onto the front end of the new Camry. If you're looking down here at the headlights, I'm a big fan of the new design. I did a Prius video not too long ago, and they kind of share the same headlight. So it starts on the bottom, loops back up into the bottom end of your hood. I think it looks really, really cool and obviously gives it a very, very great new front end design. Now, the front grille is very different for this year as well. It's basically the newest addition to the 2025 Camry and something that I think makes the car look very, very different. One thing I will be giving Toyota kudos for is that on the front end of the new Camry is that this actual functional air vent will actually be a little bit larger than the IS. I think the IS has a small little insert, doesn't look bad, but obviously when it comes to a front functional vent, you want something a bit larger. So I think Toyota's done a very, very great job, especially adding this interesting little splitter on both corners of the front bumper. I think they've done a very, very good job at keeping the vehicle very practical, yet a very, very aggressive look to such a practical everyday driving car. Now, talking about wheels onto the Lexus versus the Camry, I will be saying that on the IS luxury package, you get this very, very multi-spoke silver looking wheel. Now, I'm not a huge fan of it if you're gonna ask me for my honest opinion. I think there's just too much going on all in one, and there are so many spokes onto this alloy wheel. So I do like the design of Toyota over Lexus on this one, especially with the different colors too. I think an all one color wheel, whether it's all black, that's probably my favorite if you're gonna do a solid color. However, if it's gonna be fully silver, for me, I'm just not a big fan of all the spokes and the color on this wheel for this vehicle. Now, taking a peek onto the side profile of the Lexus IS 300, the one thing I will be saying is that the lines on the side of this vehicle versus the Camry are a little bit different. They're actually a bit more rounded off on the Lexus here, and they don't make the vehicle look as aggressive as the Camry does, which is interesting. So you're looking for something that is a little bit more sleek in that sense. Maybe this vehicle is more suited for you. Now, one thing I will say that I wish Lexus change is down here on your lower rocker panel. For Toyota, you can obviously get this as a gloss black on the Camry. So the gloss black, I think for me, matches the mirror caps a little bit better and kind of well rounds the vehicle and makes the vehicle look actually a little bit more expensive. I'm actually interested to think that Lexus didn't do that on this vehicle because the matte plastic definitely does not look as expensive versus the gloss. Now, talking rear end of the Lexus IS 300, I'm actually going to be saying I am very in favor for the rear of this vehicle. One thing to note on the vehicle that I think looks crazy good is their Lexus lights are phenomenal. So front end are great, rear end I also think they did a very good job. If you look on the rear here, you will see that their brake light actually comes across the entire stretch of the rear of the vehicle. So if you're ever driving in the nighttime, you see this kind of little like horizon almost on the rear end of the Lexus. I think they've done a very, very good job to show off what this vehicle could look like with the lights on. Now, a couple things I will say though that I'm maybe not so in favor for is going to be down here on the rear bumper. I think that this not being white or just extending this down a little bit more door would obviously make the vehicle look a little bit more well-rounded in my opinion. You guys can let me know down below what you think. But what I will say is having such a large trunk as plastic, I know why manufacturer would do that. So that obviously if you get into an accident on the vehicle, you're not replacing, a massive full painted, full body framed panels. It's just more so a plastic bumper cover, which I can understand. However, on a Lexus, and especially at this price point, getting into a new IS and as a luxury package, I would think that maybe this would be deleted and they'd actually add in the actual panels of the vehicle painted in the color that you order your new Lexus in. Now looking into the trunk space of the IS300. Now I put these chairs in the Camry beforehand to see what the space on the inside can do and what that looks like while actually holding something in the trunk of the vehicle. We put the same chairs, same configuration into the rear of this vehicle, and what I will say is that the trunk actually looks a little bit smaller actually in this one. It's not as deep, doesn't go as far back into the vehicle. I'm definitely interested to see what it looks like now on the inside and the rear seat of the Lexus, because I was talking about that on the Camry beforehand. That's a little bit tight for someone at my height. So I'm interested to see obviously if the maybe a little bit smaller trunk space has obviously opened up the rear for any rear passengers into the back of a Lexus. All right, now looking onto the rear of the 2025 Toyota Camry. So let's begin XSE. You're gonna be seeing down below here, it's gonna say XSE all in black, which I think is gonna be a really good pop, especially on a vehicle that is all black. Now, looking onto the rear of the vehicle, I'm going to say this is probably the only part of the vehicle that actually looks similar to the outgoing model. So this being a 9th generation Camry, I still think that the rear end is probably the only area of this vehicle that you can actually see a comparison versus the outgoing 8th generation Camry. Now, looking at trunk space on this vehicle, because obviously this being one of our larger sedans, you still need a lot of trunk space for practicality to have this vehicle as a daily driver. Now, if you open up the trunk, the cool thing is it's now centered to the right of the logo. It actually used to be under the logo before. Now it's all the way here over to the right. Now we have some lawn chairs put in here. 2 big ones, a little small one. However, you can still see how far back this trunk actually goes. So if you're gonna use it for groceries, going to the beach, transporting anything, you're definitely still gonna have a lot of space into the new design for a Toyota Camry. Okay, now taking a step into the inside of the IS300 luxury package. So, a couple things to note off the bat is that comparing this to the new Camry, I was saying that with the outgoing model for the Camry and the new redesigned generation as a 9th generation Camry, that everything feels a bit more premium in that vehicle. Now, I think that's still very, very true against the Camry. What I will say is that this inside feels 5 times the premium feel like the Camry does. For example, the feeling of the leather, the feeling of the dash, the steering wheel, kind of where you're sitting and how you actually feel inside the seats, which are super, super soft and very, very comfortable. It does feel very, very luxurious. However, is it worth the price difference? That's obviously up to you guys. Now, looking on the inside, I will say though, my parents have had Lexuses before in the past. I've obviously driven quite a few Lexuses because we do obviously have quite a few used ones here at our dealership. And I will say is that for 2024, the inside of this vehicle really looks the same as other previous Lexuses. You still have this little touchpad down here. The backup camera still isn't, as great as you'd expect a 2024 model to be. The way things are laid out, the way the knobs looked, all the shifters looked. I remember my papa had like an ES350 and it was like a 2014 or a 2015, and his shifter looks very, very similar to this one, which is interesting how they haven't changed it in obviously so many years. It is laid out very, very nice. The way that this all feels and the way that you actually feel inside the vehicle, I think Lexus has done actually a pretty good job. A couple of things definitely to note though is that you only have one sunroof. There's no panoramic moonroof in this vehicle. So obviously if you see my videos before, I'm a huge fan of having that, sunroof that extends into the second row. Now, I was doing a couple comparison videos and looking at a couple of videos before actually taking this video and shooting this video here, and people were saying that there is a hump on the right leg of the driver. So I'm a bit taller, and obviously the way my leg sits down, there actually is this little hump on the bottom where my leg would go. I've seen some people say they don't mind the hump. They kind of put their leg up a little bit more and they don't feel it. Well, I do feel it, and I will actually say it's not the worst thing. I know that it's not there for a driver's like leg rest, or maybe if it is, you guys can correct me in the comments. However, people have said that that's just the way that the transmission actually goes underneath the vehicle down the center of it, and that's why they had to kind of incorporate the hump into the interior of the vehicle. With that being said, on the inside of this car, you still are getting quite a few great options: cooled seats, heated steering wheel. But if you're going to compare this versus the Camry, for example, which comes in at a much higher price tag, you don't get JBL sound system. There's no heads-up display, no panoramic sunroof. So for me, I'm gonna go Toyota on this one all day long as the interior. I wish they had maybe some of the finishes of the Lexus inside the Camry, but you know, the screen's smaller, your multi-information display, it's not digital. It has the old school needles on it, which I know you can option between F Sports and whatnot. I think Toyota has done a very good job comparing to this vehicle in particular. Now, the one thing I also will say is that I drove this vehicle on the weekend to kind of get a driving feel for it, because obviously, you know, this does drive a little bit differently than the Camry. One thing I will say is that the turn signals are very interesting as well. So typically on a turn signal, you push it down once and it'll blink 3 times for you to change a lane. And if you push it down twice, it typically will stay down there until you've made your turn, and then it'll snap back up like most turn signals. But a Lexus, you actually push it twice down and it comes back up for you. So it's a little weird learning curve to note. That's one thing when I was driving, I was like, why is the signal not turning off for me? So I think it's a very, very interesting thing to note, and something that I definitely noticed when I was driving this vehicle. Okay guys, so taking a peek onto the 2025 Toyota Camry. So jumping inside, it definitely feels very familiar with the outgoing model. Only thing I will be saying is that everything now feels a little bit more premium, I would say. You feel the steering wheel, you feel the leather, you feel the seats. Everything they've done and the finishes that they've left on the vehicle definitely make the car feel a little bit more expensive, which I think is a really, really nice touch that Toyota is doing. It kind of more feels like a Lexus in a sense. This versus the outgoing model, a lot of things have changed. So standard on an XSE model, for example, JBL sound system, cooled seats, heated seats, full panoramic moonroof on the vehicle. You're getting a 12.3 touch display with wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, Sirius XM. You have all the new features and the new safety sense features. You actually have TSS 3.0, which definitely needed an update from the outgoing model, having 2.5 plus. So having this and all of the newest features obviously will be keeping you and the people inside the vehicle very, very safe. The one interesting feature I will say is that centered behind the actual steering wheel, there's a small little screen, and on that screen, it is actually going to be something called your driver monitor camera. What this does, it will actually be looking directly at you, and if for some reason you are looking not directly in front of you on the road and you're looking to your right, it will actually alert you to put both hands in the steering wheel and look forward, which I think is a really interesting thing. They've added this onto the Crown, they've added this onto the Grand Highlander Hybrid Max, and I think a lot of our newer redesigned models are going to be having one of these features, and I think it's a really interesting one. So that's one interesting new thing that I wasn't used to driving the new Camry. However, when you're sitting in here, it feels luxurious. That's the easiest way I could kind of put it. Everything about that, the way things are laid out with the new screens and the improvements that they've made. Obviously, this is being a top of the end model for us, but even the outgoing previous generation, you know, you'd start from a 7-inch screen and you could work up to a 9-inch screen. Well, now in the new 2025, you start at an 8-inch screen and you can work your way all the way up to a 12.3-inch screen. So they've definitely added a couple new things here. Talking about the seats, that's one interesting thing. Onto an SE or an SE upgrade model for a Camry, you'll be getting a white insert down the middle of your seats. It's kind of like a mixed soft text with a little bit of fabric into the seats. These ones are all black. Now in an XSE, you can option it to be all black, or you can actually still get cockpit red, which is the full red interior Camry, which was very, very popular beforehand. I actually like the black. The red is very, very bright. So for me, having the vehicle outside being black, I like the inside also being black. I think they've done a very, very good job to keep it simple, but also still kind of adding a more sporty design with the red option interior. Now, I've done a Crown review before. The Crown sits a little bit higher up than the Camry, but it definitely makes the vehicle feel a little bit higher up, like you kind of are in an SUV. However, in the Camry, the way that you're sitting now and the way that the car feels and how you feel in the vehicle, the one reason I think I like the Crown as well is that it felt a little bit more spacious. I think they've now added that into the Camry. So I would actually be taking a Camry over the Crown. I think they've done a very, very good job at laying this vehicle out very, very well. Now, a couple other things to note. Standard on this package, JBL's of course, heads-up display is a big one. The 12.3-inch screen with your MID in front of you as well. I think that they have really catered this to not only the driver, but also anyone else inside the vehicle. So it definitely could be a very, very good option for you and your family down the road. Hey guys, I know you guys are enjoying the video, but please do not forget to like and subscribe so we can become the #1 Toyota YouTube channel on earth. All right, guys, now into the rear of the IS300 luxury package. Couple things to note. Versus the Camry, I definitely have a bit more headspace back here. So I definitely feel like I would be a little bit more comfortable with the more roomy feel of this vehicle. But what I will say is that I left my seat, just like the Camry, exactly where I was sitting in it comfortably, like I'd be driving the vehicle. And I am very, very squished back here. My legs are right up against the seats. I maybe could push it forward a little bit. However, it's definitely a little bit crammed in here. I couldn't imagine having, you know, two other people in here with me, because it definitely would feel a little bit tight. Now, you would think of a vehicle that comes in at such a higher price point, you'd have a lot more, you know, luxurious things in the back here. But, you know, you pull this down and your cup holders pop out in a very interesting way, clicking this button, and then they obviously come forth like that. You get the cup holders in the rear of the Camry as well. You have no storage in any of the doors. You just have the little door handle to hold onto. You've got two vents, no charging ports. Got a couple lights back here, I guess, which is a nice touch. However, you'd be thinking at a vehicle at this price point, maybe the back seat would offer maybe a little bit more. Again, the only thing I can say is that it definitely feels luxurious. The leather, the finishes inside the vehicle are very, very nice. But maybe this is suited to someone who has maybe, you know, no one in the back seat, or someone with, you know, smaller children, or maybe just no kids at all. However, being in the back, it definitely feels a little bit more crammed versus the Camry. Jumping into the rear of the 2025 Camry. So, couple things to note. We've got the armrest down here. Again, I'm a bit taller. I am right on the cusp in the back seat here. So I don't really know if I slouch down a little bit, maybe it'd be a little bit more comfortable for me. But if I was actually sitting completely upright, I would be kind of right on the roof of the new Camry. So I think I'd be definitely more suitable to go in the front of the vehicle rather than the rear. With that being said though, it's still very, very comfortable. It's still very, very spacious. Now, obviously just being myself in the vehicle right now, if you added someone into the second seat in the middle here and then one on the other side, it might be a little squishy back here. But just for myself right now, or if I had one other person next to me here, I think it'd be more than fine and I would be comfortable to go on a nice ride. Now, a couple things I will say, it's interesting onto the XSE, because if you go XLE on a Camry, you get a couple more luxury features. But I thought it's interesting on the XSE, they didn't add heated rear seats onto the Camry. I thought they probably would for the new design. I know that, you know, that's a common feature nowadays, is having heated rear seats. They don't have that on this vehicle, which I think is interesting. You look down here and you feel around, you've got a couple USB-C ports. You got two of them actually, so you can flip them down. Obviously you can plug in your stuff, but that's really it back here. There's no, you know, climate control. There's just some vents down here, some cup holders in the center. If you guys have watched the videos before, you guys know that I love a moonroof that comes all the way back into the second row. And I think that if that wasn't into the second row, you would feel a lot more claustrophobic in the back of this vehicle. With that being said, I still think they've done a very, very good job redesigning this vehicle. For a vehicle to be around for as long as the Camry has been, to have that going on the market for its 9th generation, you know, it hasn't had a redesign since 2018. I think that there's a lot of high hopes from, you know, customers of Toyota, and obviously such a large brand. And people were wondering what's going to happen when they redesign the Camry. Is it going to look, you know, over the top? Is it going to be too futuristic? Is it going to look like the previous generation? That's a question a lot of my customers have asked, was that, you know, what's going to happen for the new Camry? I'm so happy to not only be able to drive one, have one here as a test drive unit, because this is what this vehicle is here for. It's a test drive unit vehicle, but I think they've done a very, very good job. The only thing that I'm necessarily not the biggest fan of, I'm gonna say, is yes, the back room here is not the greatest for headroom. I don't like how there's no heated seats in the back, but other than that, I think this would be a very, very good practical car for you and your family moving down the road. To the left of me, I've got a 2024 Toyota Venza. In my opinion, that is the closest thing you will be getting with a Toyota badge. That is the closest to a Lexus that we offer. I'm gonna throw that up against, to the right of me, a 2024 NX 350. We're gonna take a closer peek, see what's similar, see what's different, and you guys can let me know which one you like better. Now, looking on the front ends of both of these vehicles, we're gonna start with the Venza. So getting down here, I'm gonna tell you a couple of things that are gonna come standard on the front end to a Venza. Standard to start, fog lights, which are nice, your nice LED projector headlamps with LED turn signals, and you're also gonna have front parking sensors. And if you saw one of my previous videos on a fully loaded limited RAV, you'll know that that is standard on a limited and the only RAV that comes with it, versus the Venza, this being a middle package. There's an LE XLE fits in the middle and a Limited is above that. The parking sensors will be coming standard from Toyota on this exact trim level. Now, if you're looking at the front end of a Venza, this was redesigned in 2021. And in 2021, I think this vehicle looked very, very futuristic and something that we hadn't really seen in any of our vehicles throughout the Toyota lineup. However, now being 2024, it is looking very, very dated in my opinion. I don't think that this has the same pop or wow factor on the road versus some other vehicles that we have. And this is ultimately going to be replaced in the next coming months by a new vehicle called the 2025 Crown Signia. So make sure you guys subscribe so you will not miss that future content on that vehicle, and obviously some comparisons I will do with that vehicle in our lineup. Now, if we're going to be looking over at the NX, I did an IS300 video and talking about a newer Lexus. I actually think that Lexus has done a very, very good job at making the front ends of their vehicle with this massive grille look very, very new, but also kind of keeping that lovely luxury look to a Lexus. And I think they've done a very good job on the front ends of the NX, any of them, but this one being a 350. Now, if I'm gonna look on the front ends here, a couple interesting things. Fog lights are gonna be centered a little bit more to the corners of the front bumper, which I actually think is a pretty cool thing to do on a vehicle. You know, you could see different manufacturers could have fog lights in the middle of the bumpers, sometimes even actually a full strip that comes across the bumper. I think Lexus has done a very, very good job at keeping the lighting very, very situated in a very practical way for any consumers actually driving this vehicle. Now you pair that up obviously with their new headlights. I love the looks of their new headlights. This in the daytime, the DRLs are the little check mark that kind of comes out and swoops towards both of the wheel wells for the vehicle. And I think they have done a very, very good job at styling the front end of the new NXs. Hey guys, I know you guys are enjoying the video, but please do not forget to like and subscribe so we can become the #1 Toyota YouTube channel on earth. All right, now let's take a closer peek onto the side profile of the NX 350. Now, looking at the wheels, I'm gonna say I'm definitely in favor for these wheels. An all black wheel is definitely my #1 choice if I'm going to be picking out what color is going to be on my vehicle. You guys can let me know down below in the comments which one you guys prefer. Now, I obviously think that a black wheel with a black vehicle, it looks good. Sure, it may hide some body lines, but I definitely think the whole color match, it looks really, really good in my opinion. Now, looking at the black, you will be getting 20-inch alloy wheels on this package alone, and I think it actually fits the wheel well pretty well. Obviously, some vehicles on the market, they don't look as filled, I'm gonna say, as some other ones. You could get obviously smaller wheels, bigger wheels, but I think from the factory, Lexus has done a pretty good job, designing this vehicle. Now, the only thing I'm going to be saying on the side of this vehicle that I wish actually changed is going to be this nice gloss black piece here around your wheel well. I think that obviously it looks really, really good and is going to be something I'd take over this, which is going to be this matte black, kind of cheaper looking plastic on the side of your vehicle. I don't really know why manufacturers would go that route to make this a matte plastic. If you're gonna ask my opinion, I think it's just gonna be that if this was, maybe not plastic and actually a metal, obviously it's gonna cost a bit more to replace if anything ever hit it, or you scratched it against something. But that's the only thing I'm gonna say that I'm not in favor of on the side profile of this Lexus. I think that it just looks very, very cheap versus say a gloss or the actual vehicle to be painted, over the actual metal versus this plastic look. Now, looking onto the side profile of a 2024 Venza, if you guys have seen my previous videos, you guys will know that I'm not the biggest fan of an all silver or a chrome rim. I'm gonna be taking the Lexus rims over this one all day long. Now, talking about that, this vehicle is gonna be getting 19-inch alloy, so 1 inch smaller than the Lexus. So obviously, I still think this fits the wheel well pretty well. Obviously, some other RAV videos and some entry-level RAVs, and the wheel well looks, it has this massive, massive gap, and I don't think Toyota has managed to do that, which is good in my opinion. You guys can let me know down below. But if I'm going to be now taking a closer peek onto the side profile, I'm going to be pointing out the exact same thing I pointed out on the Lexus, is that this plastic trim I think is just such an eyesore. Now, it maybe doesn't look as bad because this color being coastal gray is obviously kind of a bluey gray, so it actually kind of has a nice contrast, I guess. I don't think I'd want this to be a matte black in this sense, but I think if it was just painted a different color, it would obviously give the vehicle a bit more of a luxurious look, especially spending the kind of dollar figure that you're spending to get into either one of these vehicles. Now, if when we're looking at the styling of these though, I actually think the Venza has done a pretty cool job, and they have some contrast that the NX does as well, but in a different sense. And what I mean by that is that the trim around the windows is going to be in this chrome or silver color, which is going to be matching the wheels. Now the NX had the same thing, except for it was gloss black, and that obviously matched the wheels as well. So I think the different contrast looks good, and I actually would prefer the color of this to be a bit different, because I actually think that the chrome contrast looks a lot better on different colors that the Venza is offered in. And if you guys have a different color, let me know which one you guys have down below in the comments. Now, I'm going to be taking a closer look onto the rear of the Venza. You're going to obviously see that this is pretty sloped. The new vehicle that's going to be replacing this, called the Crown Signia, also does the same thing. It has this very interesting sloped back. I haven't seen one in person yet. Our first one's arriving in the next month or so. So I'm really excited to see, the differences between that and the Venza. However, I think they've done a really good job at kind of sloping this back and making it look, a little bit more sporty than say a regular RAV, which I think Toyota has done a very good job in excelling in styling for the Venza. I'm going to be talking more about the NX than I will the Venza. I think that this versus the Venza, or honestly any of our SUVs, Lexus has done a very, very good job at styling the rear end of the NXs. Now, I'm going to be saying that on a couple of different notes here. First one's going to be this full brake light that comes all the way across, stretching from one side to the next. I think that Lexus lighting is always going to be one of their strong suits. I think that the front end lighting looks great. I think the rear lighting looks great. You guys can let me know, what you guys think of that on any Lexus. But I think on this specific vehicle, it looks very, very busy, but also looks very, very elegant in the exact same way. And I think that that's something that people would actually pay for on a vehicle, because, appearance does matter on a car. So I'm gonna open up the trunk here, looking at the inside space. Now, the one thing I will say versus the Venza is that both of them, you actually load in pretty high. And I mean that by that is that this is actually pretty high up. Obviously, I'm a bit taller of a person, but this is almost at my waist height. So if you've got someone a bit smaller or small kids trying to load stuff into the vehicle, they actually may have maybe a little bit of difficulties putting stuff into, the backs of either one of these vehicles. Now, with that being said, both of these come configured as a 5-passenger vehicle. So it's got a 60-40 split, so you can throw the seats down completely flat and obviously throw stuff in, because both of them do have quite a bit of trunk space. An RX would obviously have a bit more on the Lexus side, and then on a Toyota side, a RAV4 is pretty much the same, or the Crown Signia, which is coming very, very soon. Now, taking a closer look onto the Venza, opening the trunk of this one, simple, it's gonna open with a push of the button just like the NX did. And the same thing I'm going to be saying is that it's still a pretty high loading height. So space is still great. I actually think the NX has a bit more cargo space than the Venza does. Both the seats will fold flat as a 60-40. Now, the only big difference I'm gonna note in the Venza versus the NX is that this one's gonna be coming with a JBL sound system, and your subwoofer is going to be located back here in the rear of the vehicle, which is our top trim and our top sound system you can put in one of our vehicles. Other than that though, I think the rears are pretty similar space-wise, got the same kind of capabilities for anything that you're gonna be putting into the rear ends of the trunk. I'm more interested to kind of see on the inside to see what you guys think versus the NX and the Venza, to see which one's more suitable for you, which one comes with more features. So let's go inside and take a closer look. All right, guys, now let's take a closer peek onto the inside of the Venza. So I'm gonna kind of compare what's in this one that's very, very similar to the NX, but I'm gonna start with the obvious, what's not in here, and that's a sunroof. You would think that spending this kind of dollar figure, you'd be getting either a sunroof or a moonroof, but in this sense, you're actually getting neither. You need to move to a limited, so a fully loaded Venza to get a sunroof, which oddly enough doesn't even open. It simply has a feature that's going to frost the glass, which basically is a button that's up here, and it would basically show you, like a regular window, and then all of a sudden it goes from, translucent to transparent, which is a very interesting thing that they have done. I mean, obviously something that I wouldn't think is in a vehicle at that price point. Other than that though, looking at the inside of this vehicle, now it's very, very similar to the NX. the Venza has a bit less of what's actually going on inside. And I think that, what's going to be a very, very cool comparison will be comparing, this replacement vehicle, which is the Crown Signia, to an NX, because I think they're very, very, very close. So definitely stay tuned for one of those videos coming out in the near future. However, looking at a couple of things on the inside, a couple great standard things you're getting directly from the factory. You've got not only heated seats, but cooled seats for both your passenger and your driver, a wireless charger, which is situated up here behind your shifter. And that's one thing too I'm gonna note on, is that the shifters are different in both of these vehicles. You still have this larger shifter, which obviously comes up a bit higher up, versus what's gonna be in the NX, which I'm actually gonna be in favor for, and I'll show you that in just a couple of seconds. But other than that, this is very, very similar to obviously the first generation that the redesign of the Venza came out. A couple of things that they have added though. Your screen's now 12.3 inches in the middle here, which is going to be capable with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, coming from Toyota with Sirius XM, which is nice. Dual zone climate control, your push button start down here. Now, this being a hybrid, obviously this is going to be a bit better on gas and a bit less noisy on the road versus the NX, but I have driven both, and I will say the NX is actually pretty quiet. So I think that Lexus has done a very, very good job catering a gas vehicle to actually being very, very quiet and very, very comparable to one of our hybrids. So kudos to Lexus for that. The number one thing I'm actually going to say that I'm really not in favor for on this vehicle is going to be directly in front of me. You still have the old school needles, and all trim levels of Venza will get that, versus the NX, which I'll show you. They actually have a full digital tachometer, which I think most car brands are moving towards, and something that I think consumers, in this day and age kind of want in a vehicle. I don't think people still want these needles, but maybe you do. You guys can let me know if you guys are one of those people. Let me know, why you wouldn't want a new digital tachometer. Now, I'm going to move over to the driver side, for example, here. The Venza is going to be one of our very few vehicles that come with power folding retractable side mirrors. Now, the NX does as well, and I think that's one feature that I would be paying for 100%. I think that it is one thing that, it kind of gives you peace of mind, that tells you just by visually looking at your vehicle that your car is locked, and I think that they've done a very, very good job to incorporate that on a mid-level trim level for a Venza. The second thing I'm going to say I'm in favor for is going to be your two-way memory seats. You've got a driver 1 and a driver 2 profile, and I think that's really, really helpful and useful for a family, or if I'm driving the vehicle, say versus my girlfriend driving the vehicle. Obviously, she's a bit shorter than I am, so it actually comes in and it makes it a lot, easier to actually get in the vehicle and start driving. It's one less thing to kind of change or move around before you start, a short grocery trip or, a long trip up to the cottage. And I think Toyota has done a very, very good job at that. Now that's the inside of the Venza. I'm gonna take a peek into the NX 350 and see what's different. Okay, now let's talk Lexus. So on the inside, first thing, there's a lot of red. Now, this isn't as dark as our cockpit red, which is offered on an XSE Camry or a TRD Pro Tundra, Sequoia, or a Tacoma as well. However, I do like the shade and tone of this red, but I definitely think there is a lot of it. Now, if you guys have a red interior or a beige interior from Lexus over the typical black, I want to know why you guys decided to go that route. I definitely think it is actually kind of cool. You could get a red interior on a typical SUV, which you see a fair amount of on the road. So I actually think it is a really unique thing that Lexus has done to obviously give that option to any customers. Now, looking above me, yes, I'm very much so in favor of having a moonroof in this vehicle, and not just the look of a moonroof, but actually one that is functional and open. So kudos to Lexus for doing that. Now, looking on the inside, I think this versus the Venza, they've definitely, have a bit more going on the inside than the Venza. But I will say is that the way this one's laid out, a digital tachometer, the way that, your shifter feels here, the way the wireless charger sits, it's definitely in a more accessible area versus the Venza. I think that, you look at having features like cooled seats, heated seats, just like the Venza, but something so small, and I didn't even know this existed or any car even had this on the market. But if you look at your climate knobs here, it kind of has like blue onto the left and it moves all the way to right, but it's a full digital little screen here. and the blue turns into like a purple, which turns into like a pink, which then turns into a red. I think something like that, for me at least being a car guy, I think that's so cool to add such a small detail into this vehicle. Now, this being an F Sport 2 model, I'm not exactly too sure what this has that the 1 doesn't have or that the 3 doesn't have, because obviously I don't work at Lexus, but I did a little bit of research. I love the fact that you have paddle shifters. I think that's something really, really small, but something that people would pay for to have. And you actually cannot get a Venza with paddle shifters, oddly enough. But even the click of them, I don't know, I find it so satisfying. I've talked about some of the things I like about the car, a couple things I don't like about the car, and there's not many of them, but there's gonna be 2 of them. Number 1, your stop start button is going to be up here, and that's turn the car on and off. Now, I don't mind it because when you look down here, it kind of is, you know, confusing with a lot of the stuff going on, having a little storage compartment here and your charger here and, you know, all your buttons down here and your shift knob. However, I think that maybe I'd get used to it. We don't offer many vehicles other than the Tacoma, I think, and there must be another one that I'm trying to think of that I just can't think of on the top of my head, but I definitely could get used to that. However, I would want it down here because I think that having this circular button up here really shows, at least the driver, a lot of circles on the dash here. You have your drive mode selector here, you have both of the circles for your climate control knobs, and you have a circle for your volume knob in the middle. Now, that's one thing I will say I like though, is that this is black, it's not red, it's not a different color, so it doesn't have like an eyesore when you're looking where the volume knob is. I find that a lot of manufacturers are actually overcomplicating the insides of vehicle these days, and the volume knob is one of the top things they're confusing for some reason. On the Venza, it's actually a touch bar that you have to do. On the new Volkswagen, same thing. It's all that, you know, touch technology, which I just don't think is as responsive as simply, you know, a simple twisting knob. So I think they've done a good job there. Now, the only thing I'm going to say that I really do not like is going to be how to get in and out of these vehicles. You actually push this in, that unlocks your door. And the same thing when you get in the vehicle. It's not an actual handle that you pull, it's a little button on the back of the actual handle that you push, which then opens the door. Now, it's just something I'm not used to. Is it something I could get used to? Of course. I think it is interesting. I know that obviously it's nice because it alleviates a little space bar here that obviously you'd pull out and hit your leg. So I think that, you know, that is more practical. You guys can let me know what you guys think about that, you know, if that took a bit of adjusting on your end. However, that's the only thing only 2 things I'll actually be complaining about for the inside of the Lexus. All right, now looking onto the rear of the NX. So left my seat where it was as per usual, and I'm not overly spacious back here, but am I complaining about it? No. As you can see, the red theme has continued all the way into the back. Now, I'm definitely happy that they put black on the backs of these seats versus red, for example, because if you've got small kids or in like a car seat, for example, and their feet are kind of sitting up here, throwback to those days, obviously, but you know, their feet were kind of be hitting the backs of these seats. And obviously, being a Lexus and spending this kind of money, I wouldn't obviously want to be getting the backs of these seats dirtied up, especially being like a red leather, which would be a bit more difficult, I think, to get out. So I think they've done a good job, and you know, they've actually thought about, okay, which would actually make more sense for, you know, the everyday consumer. So good job to Lexus on that. Now, a couple other things I guess to note is that you still have that interesting door handle back here, which is fine. Again, something I could get used to. But other than that, you've got a couple USB-C ports down here, no heated rear seats. You got a couple of vents here, which is nice. Obviously, got it's a nice hot day out, so I'm getting some nice AC my way. But other than that, that's kind of it. I actually think this versus the Venza, which I'm about to jump into, I actually have a bit more headspace in this because the roof of this isn't slanted and not sloped back like the Venza. But I will say is that you actually have, it's a bit deceiving. You actually have a good 2 inches between the top of the car and actually the top of the moonroof. So someone who's a bit taller, and obviously my hair sticks up a bit here, but this actually works for me back here. I actually think I'll be taking this over the Venza. I haven't sat in there yet. Rear space, I might be in favor of Lexus on this, and so far, I think Lexus is actually winning this comparison. Let's jump into the Venza. All right, let's talk Venza now, into the rear seats. I'm actually kind of surprised. I have a lot more headspace than I thought I would back here. I don't think I have really ever sat in the back of a Venza, or if I have, it's been a while, so it's not too bad. The only thing I will be saying though is that It's very dark in here, especially coming from there. Now take the red seats out of the picture though for a second. It's just the simple having a sunroof or a moonroof. It opens up the car so much more, and I feel like most SUVs on the market, I feel like people would pay to have that. Maybe you don't need the leather, maybe you don't need the cooled seats or the JBL sound system or the biggest screens, but at least to have the moonroof, I think, is a really, really good feature, and consumers would actually buy that. But just like the NX, this doesn't have a whole lot going on down here. The only big differences I can see, obviously you still have the typical handle here, not the Lexus style handle, but obviously on that vehicle, your speakers, which are down here for me, are actually built up here on the actual door panel, which I think is actually a pretty good idea because it's gonna give you more sound, a bit higher up. So I think the sound system will actually sound a bit better in that one versus this one that has JBLs. But other than that, couple climate control vents. Now, the Venza does not have 120 volts that the NX does. So if you are gonna be charging, say, a laptop up, or you need like an extender into like a wall outlet, the NX could do that for you. The Venza will not be able to do that for you. And the other thing I'm going to point out is above me is this little light here. Again, it's nice to have that in the rear, but the NX, it was kind of more towards the backs of these seats, which I actually think looked a bit better. It looks cleaner on the inside. And obviously with this vehicle not having a moonroof, it's kind of like an eyesore. It's the only thing along this entire headliner from the trunk all the way to the front, minus like your visors and stuff like that for driver and passenger. But I definitely think that's a little bit of an eyesore. That's just my opinion. You guys can let me know down below in the comments if you think otherwise. If you did like this video, please do not forget to hit like and subscribe so you do not miss any more of our future Toyota related content, and we'll check you guys out in the next video.